Are you recording?
I am.
Hello everybody, Simon Mayer here, and with me is ace-American mandolin player Jordan Ramsey, who has just turned up at my workshop here in the beautiful Kenwood Hall Hotel in Sheffield. And Jordan gave us a little demo this afternoon to, how many students did we have? About 25, I think. 25 students on a particular technique at which he is a leading exponent, called cross-picking, popularised originally by Jesse McReynolds. Jordan, just tell us briefly what cross-picking is and why it was invented, and give us a little demo.
Sure, absolutely. Cross-picking is the flat pick equivalent of a three-finger Scruggs-style banjo roll. So reverse roll would be thumb, middle index, and Jesse had the idea that he could take that particular banjo roll and adapt it to a flat pick. Here's a Jesse solo from a tune called Are You Missing Me?
So that's like little bells firing off all the time, isn't it? And great sustain from, there's basically three strings ringing at once all the time there, isn't there? It's a unique technique. And this afternoon Jordan has had 25 students, and me, trying to do this with a little bit of success,
I think so.
due to his clear explanations. You're basically from a bluegrass background, aren't you, Jordan?
Yeah. Well, I was a piano kid, and I was a trumpet major in college, so I was in school to be a band director.
Oh, right.
I picked up the mandolin at age 20 after hearing a recording of David Grisman.
Yeah.
Heard that the sound of his mandolin and was drawn to it.
Yeah.
And
Inspiration to many people. David Grisman. Yeah.
Started a lot of mandolins being bought in the United States and abroad. Yeah, dropped out of school and went and found Jack Tottle, who wrote the Bluegrass Mandolin book in the 70s, and he actually started a bluegrass program at East Tennessee State University. So I'm from Tennessee, I was going to school to be a band director in Tennessee, found out about this program and dropped out of school and went and studied with Jack for about 4 or 5 years. Right. And that was pretty much how I got into it.
So David Grisman first came to prominence in the United States probably in the late 60s, early 70s, would that be right?
Yeah, I would say that.
And before that, I suppose the main inspiring figure in the mandolin scene before him was Bill Monroe.
Absolutely.
And Jesse McReynolds, to whom you've just referred, not quite as prominent a player as Bill Monroe.
Never had the notoriety that Bill had.
No. But among the aficionados,
He was
highly respected.
Tops,
Yeah. So what effect did the appearance of David Grisman and his music have when he appeared on the scene then? Because his style is basically a bluegrass style, isn't it?
It is. I mean, Grisman says that when he first started playing the mandolin for many years, he wanted it to be just like Bill Monroe.
Yeah.
And then because Monroe was always a big proponent of people having their own sound and their own style.
Really
so he really didn't want people to emulate him. He said, if you want to be a mandolin player, go find your own style. And I think that really resonated with Grisman, and that's when he started incorporating jazz, Latin, basically a big fusion of a lot of different styles, but based in the bluegrass sonic area, just in terms of the mandolin acoustic played with a strong right hand, just in kind of different harmonic context. And I think that's really what drew a lot of people to that sound, is that it was folky, but it was still, it felt modern. Yeah. Because it was harmonically, it was more complex.
Yeah.
Rhythmically, it was very exciting.
Yeah. I think it's something that I always tell my students when I do workshops, that if you admire a certain figure in the mandolin world and you want to emulate them, that's fine, but your individuality is always your strongest selling point.
Absolutely.
And which is why it's good, if you're learning the mandolin, it's good to take lessons from more than one person, don't just listen to one player and try and emulate them. There's a big wide world out there.
Absolutely.
So Monroe's advice to Grisman, spot on, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then, of course, David Grisman is, I think you Americans use the term senior, an elder statesman of the mandolin now.
He was born in 46 or somewhere in the 60s.
Yeah, probably about.
So he's probably he's in his 70s.
Yeah, and he's had a huge influence over the past few decades on the mandolin.
So many people in the States play piano because they heard David Grisman.
On the mandolin, yeah. So tell us about the actual scene now in the States. There's a whole new wave of really talented young players coming along.
Absolutely.
I suppose Chris Thiele is the name that comes to mind.
I kind of credit him with a resurgence of popularity in a younger generation of players. Almost all of the great modern players who are under 30 or really under 25, you really hear a lot of Thiele's influence in their style and their playing. I think one of my favorite, one of the best mandolin players in the country is a young lady named Sierra Hull.
Yeah.
And she definitely has that influence, but one thing that she also has is she's so creative. And like you could kind of, at least for me, I'm a mandolin nerd, I can tell when it's her. I think that's
so once again, she's got her individuality.
She's finding her own voice, her own style. And I think, to me, one of the biggest compliments that you can receive is that, if someone hears you and they recognize your playing. Like, oh, that's, and just like Mick Reynolds, most people when they hear Jesse, like, oh, that sounds like Jesse, or that's David Grisman. I can tell because it sounds like him. I think, that's it.
Now, the mandolin scene in the States has always been much more vibrant than in this country. It's quite a musical backwater in this country. There's no huge tradition of the mandolin being used certainly not in English folk music, probably a little more so in Scottish and Irish. So we don't have the tradition of a mandolin in our native folk music here so much. But of course, going back to Bill Monroe, he firmly planted the mandolin in an American folk music, didn't he? Which is what bluegrass is.
Yeah.
It's an American folk
music. And this style of mandolin, I really credit him with. Without Bill Monroe, people may well be playing A-model mandolins or even bowback mandolins in the States. I think he really kind of solidified the use of this style of mandolin, at least with bluegrass.
Yeah, which is a little bit of a chance, really, because this style of mandolin was actually developed by the Gibson Company before bluegrass came along.
Oh yeah.
This was developed as a classical instrument.
Yes, so the famous guy who changed, so it used to, the F style was a thing from the early 1900s.
Yeah.
There were oval holes. And then Lloyd Loar came along to Gibson in 1922 and changed it to a elevated fingerboard with an F-hole instrument, which was louder, more projected.
Yeah.
They were, Lloyd Loar was a classical musician, and they were meant to be classical, top-of-the-line classical mandolins, and I think they were probably, and still are, rejected for classical music, but somehow Bill Monroe found one in a barbershop window in Florida in the mid-40s, and that kind of changed the direction of where American mandolins went.
I think these days this style of mandolin is probably more accepted in the classical mandolin world than it used to be.
I would say so.
I actually started out, I think the first 8 years of my playing career was on a roundback mandolin, and I like the sound of classical mandolin, of roundback mandolins, but I actually switched to a carved instrument because I found it to be more versatile. I could play folk music on it, and I could play classical music on it. When I played folk music on a roundback mandolin, I wasn't really getting what I wanted out of the mandolin. So personally, I simply found a carved mandolin a more versatile instrument. But I know you like bowbacks as well, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've got an old 1913 Raffaele Calace Brevettato 900, I think is the model.
That's one for the mandolin nerds, folks. Yeah.
I found it in shambles on eBay at a estate auction
Right.
from South Carolina. Bought it sight unseen.
Yeah.
I ended up spending more getting it repaired than I paid for the instrument.
Whoops. But was it worth it?
Absolutely, I
Yeah.
love it. It's beautiful. It has a lovely sound,
Yeah.
and especially for I was saying earlier that trying to play calace on the mandolin there are a lot of large stretches and awkward fingerings and certainly a lot of technical difficulties that a smaller scale neck and a lighter string gauge really helps.
Yes.
I was kind of I was working too hard on my full length F5 trying to play this music. So for me, it has a place in my collection. It's something that I actually play and use and love the sound of. Yeah,
I have not a round-back mandolin, but I have a Lion and Healy Mandolin, and I'm used to playing a 352 scale length. I've also got a 360 scale length, which I've not got with me. But whenever I pick the Lion and Healy up, and it's such a shorter scale, it's basically violin scale length. It almost seems like a toy when I pick it up, you know. But it's so easy to play after playing the carved instrument with the longer scale length.
Absolutely.
Better that than the other way around, really. Better to have the ease of playing a short scale instrument occasionally than having the shock of going bigger. Yeah. Is there much of a scene in the States for people playing round-back mandolins? Is there a Neapolitan scene in the United States?
I mean, there are still various mandolin orchestras around the country, and I think there are players. It's certainly not as prominent as your F-style scene, a bluegrass scene. It tends to be just more. I think the other thing is, bluegrass is a very social music. So when you go to a bluegrass festival, you don't just go to watch people play music. You go to play music with other people in the parking lot. Yeah. And because that culture, it's a social thing, I think it's brought a lot more people in. Whereas like to have a classical scene in America, you really have to cultivate it from an educational. You have to start people playing mandolin in grade school or primary school. And kind of build that culture. And then after, a lot of people who play music in high school, whether it be band or orchestra, if they don't continue with it professionally, a lot of folks don't play music after that, because ultimately you'd have to do like community orchestra, or you'd have to get together with people and sit down and read music. So I think the one thing that bluegrass has done that's promoted itself so well is made it a social culture. People can get together informally and just play music together and just meet up, and you don't have to have the arrangements and the someone leading the session. You sit down and everyone calls a tune.
And the beauty of a gathering like that is that, in a sense, it doesn't really matter how good you are. You can join in. Absolutely. You can find your feet. You can find players at a similar level to you, and if you're lucky, play with people who are a bit better than you are, and pick up some licks and get some good ideas. Hilary James and I were over in Germany recently, playing at a folk festival there, and I had an interesting conversation with Wolfgang Meiring, who was a very good mandolin player over in Germany, and he was the organiser of this festival. And he was explaining to me that in German there are two words for musician, one of which means a classical musician who only ever sits down with his or her instrument and plays what's on the dots in front of them and never does anything else. And there's another word which means a musician like you and me, who is someone who may be able to read music, as we both do, but also we're used to playing informally with people. And when some music is happening, we listen to it and we pick up our instrument and we think, how can we contribute to what's going on? We don't think, where's the score? We think, what's that chord sequence? What key is that in? What tune are they playing? Do I know it? How can I add something artistically to what's going on? And he was lamenting the fact that the word that means a formal classical musician in German, he said, all of these people, he said, they look down on us. He He said, he said, I'm proud to be someone who jams. I'm really proud to be someone who just listens and adds what I can. And I think, personally, I agree with him entirely. I think it's, and of course it's fantastic if you can do both, of course, if you can read the dots as well. Absolutely. That's our advice. Jordan Ramsey, thank you very much. It's been great to talk to you, and it's been great to hear you play.